It's been a while since I've made one of these videos. The reason for this is because I've been rather sick lately. But anyway, I managed to, in this game, bump my rating up from 1888 to 1902. Not only did I manage to get over 1900 rating points, but I also managed to beat a 1971 rated player, which I'm pretty happy about. Anyway, here is the game. I played Nimzo Indian for black, uh, and because I'm not so familiar with the theory, I've studied it I think 5 times now. I've looked over all the moves many times, uh, but every single time I play it, I forget what to do, and it's rather embarrassing because, well, whenever white plays d4, well, I'm virtually forced to play Nimzo Indian because it's the only response I know. Either I can play Nimzo Indian, or I can play a really bad Queen's Gambit declined. Uh, the only alternative is, well, just ditching the game and aborting. Anyway, I closed up the position with e5. This stopped the bishop and the queen from having this nice diagonal. However, unfortunately, it also made this bishop a little bit bad is the word. And it also stops my knight from getting into the game, and therefore this bishop is sort of, well, it's not really doing much. Anyway, in order to solve this bishop problem, I moved my rook. Oh, let's turn that off. I moved my rook to e8 so that my knight would be able to come to this g6 square. Now, although this maneuver takes 3 moves in total, um, it's justifiable, seeing as the position's pretty closed with this pawn structure. There are no ways really to actually, break open the position within 5 moves. So by playing a 3-move long combination to get a piece to a better square, because the knight wasn't really doing anything there, is completely okay. Not much can happen, so therefore it's fine. Now, here I played a very big mistake. King h7 doesn't really make much sense. I'm not really sure why I played it, actually. I think my thinking was to play knight back here or something, bring my rook here, and then play g5. I don't know why, but I thought it might look cool. So, I played king h7. It was a mistake, and you'll see why later. I tried to open up the position a little bit on the queen side. This is because I felt that maybe my bishop would be able to come around here at some point, and this bishop would have more opportunities if it was to get to a6. So by playing b5, it wasn't such a bad idea. I was met with b4, and right here, when I took, all I was thinking about was pawn takes, and I was thinking, oh great, yes, this is perfect. They've got a pawn over here, I've got a pawn over here, they're facing each other, there's no way that this guy's gonna fall. And this is all that I was thinking. All I could think of was pawn takes, pawn takes, pawn takes, pawn takes, pawn takes. There's nothing else that can take this pawn. Right? Turns out I was wrong. If rook takes, and I didn't see this rook takes for whatever reason, it's silly, I know, but I didn't see rook takes pawn. This pawn would be in a lot of trouble. Not only does the rook attack it, but the knight attacks it, and the bishop attacks it. The only defenders are my rook and this bishop. And even if I do manage to successfully defend this in the short term, it'll be very easy for white to just bring their queen over here and then bring their rook into the game. And so this pawn, without a doubt, will fall, and there's no changing that. Unfortunately, it is a goner. Anyway, they didn't play b4 as I was not expecting. Instead, they played the b4, a takes on b4 as I was expecting. Anyway, I played a knight here to try to trade off material, and if bishop takes, as they did, I would capture on c3 with my queen, Now, here I didn't see this very, very beautiful maneuver for white, and luckily white didn't either. But it turns out white can actually successfully sacrifice their knight for 2 pawns, and then fork the 2 rooks with their bishop. In this position, um, it is kept equal, which is surprising, seeing as black is down the exchange and they've just lost 2 pawns, lose 2 pawns. Anyway, lost 2 pawns for a piece. But anyway, now here is a very significant part of the game. The reason I decided to too far. Sorry. Now, the reason I decided to do a repetition of moves is because my opponent is higher rated than myself, and at this point I was thinking it's probably around about equal. I don't really want to lose against this guy because I'm so close to beating the 1900 mark. So it's best if I just try to draw against him, because seeing as he is higher rated than myself, I'll get rating points for it, and he'll lose some. So by trying to get a repetition out of him, if the position repeats 3 times, as you know, it's an instant draw. So, or at least, you know, you can claim threefold repetition. Sorry, it's not instantaneous. Now, after this bishop b2 move, I was very happy, seeing as I was able to lodge my rook in here. I was going to bring my other rook in, and basically, as you know, oops, rooks on the 2nd rank and 7th rank, very, very powerful, especially when doubled up. Additionally, this knight is attacked, and if it moves out of the way for whatever reason, this bishop will be captured. So they defend the knight, of course. And at this point, I thought I was being very, very clever. Turns out I wasn't. I thought that this knight captures on e4 was a brilliant move, seeing as I've just taken a pawn, and if they decide to capture, I'll simply take the bishop. Aren't I smart? Well, no, because bishop goes right here, pinning the knight up and also attacking this rook. So, all thanks to my earlier king h7 move, this knight is pinned, and I can no longer make my way out of this situation with a move like rook here, seeing as either rook can take or bishop takes with check, and then rook takes rook. But luckily for me, my opponent played exactly how I wanted them to play, just as they had with the b4 pawn situation actually again. But anyway, I managed to play out exactly what I wanted them to play. So, I managed to get my rook into a very nice position, and now the bishop is in a pretty bad place. Not only is it on the back, where it's not really doing much, it's got this pawn. Basically stopping it from coming here and occupying this diagonal, and it's not able to come here because there's no point. It has this pawn blocking this off. It can't come here because of this pawn. It can't come here because of the rook, but let's just say the rook moved out of the way or something. Here would be a useless square as well, because there's a pawn here, and coming here is useless as well because of this pawn. So there are no real squares where the bishop can go to apart from here, which is why I played this move right here. Basically, if they were to try to play this move now, I'd be able to play f4. So not only did I try to stop this bishop with the threat of forking, but I also tried to stop the knight from coming into a square like this and taking advantage of a backwards d6 pawn. So I had quite a few threats there, and I decided to play this anyway just to stop the knight from coming back into the game, and also to stop the bishop from coming here, because there was no longer a knight here to, if bishop was played to here, there would no longer be a threat of forking, seeing as there was no piece here anymore. Anyway, so that's the reason I decided to play f4, just to stop the bishop here, coming to here. Now, At this point, I hadn't noticed this bishop takes on f5 move. Sorry, bishop f5 move. I was playing pretty conservatively. I was worried about a move like rook a7. The reason being, rook takes on e7 with check. But little did I know that after rook takes, king back to the back rank, and after say something like rook here, and then they capture this pawn. I can very simply play bishop here, pinning up the knight and trapping it. There's no way for this knight to get out of the way, seeing as there's a rook pinning it to the king, and there's only one defender of that piece, while there are two attackers, so that knight is dead. And while that knight will die, the rook is basically doing nothing over on this side. The only thing going for the only thing going for white is that maybe they'll be able to capture this and turn this into a queen. But that's very, very unlikely at this point. Oh, sorry. Instead of playing this, however, I decided to play conservatively, and I just played my rook back to stop any rook a7 ideas. Now, here, I thought I was being sneaky again. I was thinking, ooh, goodness, aren't I smart? I took on b4, thinking that, oh, well, clearly just rook takes on b4, that's the only move. And then after they've captured, I'll just take the bishop with a check. Isn't that fantastic and lovely and nice? Let's look at the advantage meter if this were the case. Yeah, so I'd have won a pawn, and it'd be roughly -1, which isn't as good as the -3 that I was previously at, but I had no idea that I was this good, positionally. But anyway, little did I know that they could simply capture on f4 with their own bishop and sacrifice it. Now, there is no longer a rook takes bishop with check move. So after I take, they capture my bishop, and I've sacrificed a bishop for a pawn, and they've sacrificed a bishop for a pawn. And the position now is completely equal, because the only thing that kept white in a really bad place was that really bad bishop on c1. If I had realized how bad it was because of this pawn, I would not have taken here. But anyway, I managed to accidentally solve all of their problems, which is a little bit embarrassing, but anyway. Here I narcissistically thought that I was completely winning yet again. Little did I know that it was completely equal. Anyway. Oh, actually, let's turn this off. Now, after this point, I thought I was completely winning. Seeing as these three squares are defended, so therefore the rook can't get to any of them, and therefore they can't attack this pawn and stop it from queening. The rook can't go here because, well, then there's the very simple rook d2 check after rook takes, which is basically compulsory. Pawn takes, king somewhere, and then weak queen. But little did I know, and my opponent didn't know either, they could just play rook b8, and this would solve all of their problems, seeing as, well, all they have to do now is just check the black king as much as they like. There's no way to get out of this. Basically, the d5 pawn adds tensions, so I'm going to have to take this at some point. If I try to move my king in here and then queen, then I'm going to have some problems in case, you know, they try to queen themselves. So basically, as long as the white rook can get to b8 and then just check continuously, black has no chances of winning. But anyway, my opponent didn't see this rook b8 move, and instead played this insane and crazy and silly move, king g2, and I wasn't really surprised by this because I thought I was winning anyway. I had no idea that they could play rook b8, and I thought I was I had in the bag. I was very, very happy, and I was celebrating prematurely that I had reached a rating of 1900, or I was at least going to. Um, but anyway, I won as predicted. Looked at the analysis, computer analysis, and realized I was not as well off as I thought I was. But anyway, uh, it's an important lesson that I learned. I should have analyzed this position and realized that, in fact, this bishop is really, really bad, and there's no way on earth that they're going to be able to solve this problem. And that is the reason why black is virtually up an entire piece positionally, because this bishop might as well not even exist. It's just cluttering up the position. It forces this rook to stay on the back rank, which means this rook isn't very active. It can't do anything because of this bishop. So basically the only piece that white has to play with is the king, this knight, and the pawn. That's it. That's all they have going for them. So what I should have done is definitely not this move, seeing as it allows them to not only equalize in material, but it also allows them to, basically what's happening is I'm trading off my good bishop, my extremely good bishop, for their extremely bad bishop. So oh well, that was a pretty big mistake, and cost me the game, or at least it could have. But anyway, so in essence, if you think you're well off, don't think that until you've analyzed, okay? Only think that you're well off if you well, if you have evidence of it. Don't just think that you're doing well because of certain reasons, or just because you're feeling it, or something. Chess isn't about how you feel, really. Chess is about calculation, being methodical. Anyway, that's one more lesson done.